Hello and welcome back to module number 5. Today I'm going to talk about PHP mainly, but in the design aspect we will look at how to apply PHP to your code in HTML and JavaScript and how to apply that into Dreamweaver and the issue with Dreamweaver and PHP. So I'll try to explain everything. I'll try to be concise and accurate so you will not run into problems, and I hope it will make more sense. So let's start with PHP. So what is PHP? The idea here is that it is considered to be hypertext pre-processing that allowed us to run the code on the server side, not on the client side, which means we are dividing here two aspects, the server side versus the client side. JavaScript is a client side. PHP is the server side or the other side, and it will be able to us to embed the HTML into the PHP in order for us to run it. So it's allowed us to execute on the server side and be able us to do things that otherwise the JavaScript does not allow us to do. JavaScript is what the users see, but if we want to connect to the database or to pull something from other server side, we are not able to do that. So the PHP aim to help us to do that, and the idea here is that it has similar, if you took the C++ or the object-oriented class, you will be familiar with the idea, the execution and how it applied. So all PHP statements end with the semicolons, and it acts like basically like a C++ code. So each PHP script must enclose as a HTML, and this is the beauty of it. Like C++ and like C or like any other programming language, we have the ability to write comments in order for us to understand what we are doing. As we discussed in JavaScript, in PHP we also have variables, but it has to begin with the dollar signs in order for us to understand that this is a variable, and it is a case sensitive. So $foo or $foo can be different variables, and we can obtain them by two distinctions. One is a local versus global. Global variable can be used anywhere. Local variable is restricted to a function or a class. So this is the issue with the global versus local, and again, the form, how to get it. For example, when we're going to learn about how to conduct a form in PHP or how to submit the data from the HTML form to the database, we're going to use the idea of the post and get. And usually if you saw the code inside of it, is usually start with a $ underscore post or get, and this is the two type of methodologies usually being used in order for us to send to the server the information we are getting. And the server variables is usually $ underscore variables. So, and again, this is a part of the issue that we're going to learn. Example in this case is $foo equal 25 is numerical value, and $bar is a string value. And again, we can multiply and we can do expression with that type of language. One of the things that the PHP allowed us to do is echo. And the idea here is that it passes through a string in order for us to pass the data. So the syntax is that the string argument 1, and we will do echo in order for us to pass it to another argument or another string, in order for us to validate what we are trying to achieve. So example, again, this is example, and notice how the echo 5 multiplied by 5 is equal $variable foo, and this is how we pass these arguments using the echo into another variables or another components. And this is important because you going to learn how to use the variables and to use the echo in order for us to make your argument stronger and much more concise in that regard. I am very passionate about statistics. I am very passionate about calculation. And again, probably if you're not familiar with my work, and so this is how you applied example, the $A minus the $B, how do you do division or advance or plus, minus, multiply, and so on in PHP. One of the things that it's usually important to remember is that a period to join a string into one, which means that in this case, if you look closely to the code itself, we have string 1, which will say hello, string 2 will be PHP, and string 3 will be string 1 and string 2. And we are going to print string 3. And so in this case, this is what happens by using those strings as an ability for us to present the result. Escaping the character. It is one of the things that we often try to do. If the string has a set of double quotation marks that must remain visible, we often use backslash before the equation and to marks to ignore or display that. So example, $ headings, and it is computer science, and we are going to print the heading, it will say computer science. But if we are going to use quotation marks, this is how we do that, and see how much time we have to spend in emphasize that we want it in quotation marks in order for us to apply that. So the control structure in PHP allowed us to have a structure within the language that allowed us to control the flow of the execution that you are running your script. So the group into condition, or the structure that is if else, and the idea of the loops as we talked about that in JavaScript. For example, again, I'm giving you an example that is displayed on your PowerPoint presentation, and it's if else, and if the result of the we execute the if else if and else in order for us to see how it will run. So again, this is an example. If user is equal John, then print hello John, else print you are not John. So again, if else and the statement, not then in PHP. How do we do a loop, sorry? We are doing it with a condition. A statement with a condition will say that the following. So we are doing, first of all, we are creating a variable, which is $count. We will give you a value of 0, while we will count smaller than 3, and we will print and we will add in order for us to display hello PHP, hello PHP, hello PHP 3 times in this simple code. Okay, I know that I'm jumping ahead, but I want to remind you again, this is a code that runs on the server, so you will not be able to see it in your machine that you are trying to run the code. You will need to post it on the website in order for you to see it. So that's why it's so important that you will upload the code, run it on the server in order for you to see the result. We can display date, we can be more specific, month and date format, we can also use functions. And functions are groups of statements that can execute as a single unit. So the definitions are the lines of the code that make the function. So the syntax of defining a function is the function name, there's underscore the function premises, and the statement. And in this case, that's how we will run the functions in order for us to apply that. And unlike variable, function names are not case sensitive. So again, this is something that I want you to look at. This is an example of function. And a function foo, and we have two variables inside, and the variable 2 and 3 are then calculate in order for us to see what is the result of it and how do we store and output all those functions. So in this case, run it on the server, see what the results are, and see what it is. Function statements do the actual work of a function and must be contained within function bars. And so again, in this example, I'm displaying display company name, and it will say echo company 1, echo company 2 and 3. And if we will say display course technology, this will be the outline of the function. Returning value is also important as you learn in C++. So the return statement returns a value to the statement that is called a function. But not all functions return values. And so this is again example of how it returns value inside the PHP code and how it passes through. So the pass function allowed us to have a value or a reference to it in order for it to go through. So a function is basically passing by a reference, is a reference to the original variables. So the variable scope is where your program, a declared variable, can be used. And a variable scope can be either global or local. And again, global variable is the declare outside. It's all your parts of your program. Local refers to the function that is available within the function you declare in your code. So this is an example of a global variable. And again, global variable, I will call it global variable, and this is the example of it. And see, this is what we will echo. We have other choices, and I want you to read or reference it to our textbook in order for us to be more understandable to the autoglobes, using the autoglobes in PHP. And it is a client-server environment that can allow you to do the script. So it is the array, which is the elements that are reflected within the keys instance of the index number that allows you to do that. So in this case, this is part of the terminology that we use, the array that we use. Example, $_cookie, and the array of value passes to the current script as HTTP cookies or $environment, and you will see that in basically in all the codes that are available for you in PHP that has those arrays. So in this case, get, post, server, globals, all of them are part of it. And we will use specifically the $@get as a method of submitting a form. So a $get is the form that data is a long string that allowed us to send the data to the server. So an example, Google uses it quite a lot in their code. When you search, for example, PHP, he will come up and will show you all the string in it. This is a get. And a get compared to post, the post will not allow you to see that. In a get is more transparent, and you can see what you have searched in Google, but it's also a code that we are using in PHP. So again, the post is more specific. It's the idea of the name of the variables, and we are putting it into the HTML form. And by doing that, we are trying to communicate with the server that is sitting not in our machine, but on the web, and be able to communicate in order for us to do that. So making decision or flow control is the process that determines the order in which the statement execute in the program. And this is part of the PHP, and this is part of why the PHP is such a stronger platform to the web itself. When we are using the if statement, it is used to execute specific code if the evaluation of the condition returns a true value. So the syntax is quite simple. If condition, as we learn it in JavaScript, it contains three parts: the keyword if, the conditional expressed within this premises, and the executional statement. And there is also the idea that we have also a command block if a group of statements contained within the set of the brains. So each command block must have an opening brace and a closing brace. So in this example, the if condition, and again $, variable, and it will equal true, 5. And in this case, we evaluate if the condition is true, and if it's true, we will come up with execution that will display it. If else, again, as we learn in JavaScript, the same syntax, but in this case is the PHP that execute that statement on the server side. So if else, again, the same thing, and the nest and everything else together with that. So it allowed you to apply and execute. As we learn in JavaScript, the switch statement is again case label, and the idea of comparing the value of the expression and be able to apply that. It consists the following: the switch keywords, the expression, the opening brace, one or more case labels, the break keywords, the default label, and the closing brackets that close out the statement that you are trying to do. The switch statement is the syntax of the whole thing, and we can do the switch, the expression, the case, label, statement, and break, and we can have another condition, case, label, and we can have the default, the break. And we can see that in the case label, the keywords, and how we apply that, and how do we do the switch in case it is a little bit a longer case that we want to test. So again, the switch in this case, video games, and we will see how it applies. Repeating code. A loop is a repeating code, as I said it in JavaScript. And there are 4 types of loop: while, do while, for, and for each. Each of them has its important aspect, and each of them has its own statement. While statement has the what execute in a series of statements at each stage of the loop, and the syntax while has to have as a condition. If it's true, it will be execute or block that follow execution repeatedly. So it will continue on and on. One request, something that I learned from my own experience: do not leave it as open, otherwise it will take a lot of energy from the server and from your machine, and everything will continue to loop. So be aware that the loop can sometimes be dangerous. While statement, again, the same idea with the idea of counter, is a variable that increments or decrements within each loop of the statement. So, example, count 1, while the count is smaller than 5, and so in this case you will display 5, and this is the loop or while that you are using to operate. And again, 10, the same thing, the same idea. Infinite loop is, again, this is something that I always fear to use, something that is always that you need to be careful when you're using it, but I want you to try, otherwise you will never learn, and this is something that you can use it in order for you to learn about that. Otherwise, stop it, otherwise it will continue to do that forever. Test the condition after executing a series of statements, then repeat the execution as long as the condition expression evaluate to be true. So the syntax do while is the following, and this is do while, and this is how it will apply. And again, this is the code and how it combine them. So again, the true false, as I said, as I repeated in JavaScript, the same thing and the same conditions that we often reply and apply to. For each, again, this is the last example, is the idea of the loop through elements in the array. Do not require a counter, but instead require an array expression within a set of premises that will follow the for each keywords. So in this case, the syntax will be for each array name as variable name, and it will be as the following statement in order for it to be executed. An example, again, this is the example of for each, and it will display the following. So I hope it makes sense. I hope it will apply. We talked about functions as a group of statements that you can execute as a single unit. We talked about how we auto globs contain client, server, and environment information that you can use in your script, and the decision making or the flow control that you can control how you execute your program. Basically, you are creating a program, and the PHP is your vehicle to create this program. We talked about function definition. We talked about how it passes the value in a local copy of the variable, but also as a reference as the original variable. And we also talked about global variable that declare outside the function and how he available to all parts of your program. The local variable we talked about decision making or flow control, and the if conditions and how we apply that and how it apply, and we saw example of if else and how it apply, and the switch and how it apply. So those are the foundation of PHP, and what I want you to do is look at php.net and also use w3schools.com PHP in order for you to learn more about that. So until next time, I will talk to you about how we start moving towards MySQL. And my second video will talk about the design aspect of PHP and how we apply that, for example, in Dreamweaver, and what is the problem that I would like to you to be aware of when you're using PHP and Dreamweaver. Until next time, talk to you soon.